Mask problems. Good morning, everyone. My name is Melody Moberg, and I serve as Director of Religious Education. I'm also a candidate for Unitarian Universalist ministry. I've been having some minor health problems over the past weeks, and because of that, I pre-recorded the prayer and the sermon because I wasn't sure if I would be able to join for worship in person. The theme of today's worship service is sacred space. I'm joyful to be with you all today, and I'm grateful to be joined in our spoken liturgy by my colleagues Aria Curtis and the Reverend Beth Chronister. For this intergenerational worship service, we ask that everyone remain masked here and throughout the building. As we enjoy the doxology and familiar hymns, please listen and refrain from singing for the safety of all. After worship, offering plates will be available as you exit the chapel. Enjoy coffee and conversation outside following the service. The Memorial Garden and Lower Plaza are available for visiting. If you'd like gluten-free cookies or a juice box for your child, ask at the kitchen window in Nathan Johnson Hall. UUC is hosting a blood drive with Bloodworks Northwest on August 18th and 19th, and again the following week. See the UUC website and calendar for more information. And the Vespers service this week will focus on the theme of joy. Come for an evening of reflection, music, and movement through the practices of interplay.
Welcome to this common, sacred space. Common because we are all welcome. Sacred because here we transform the ordinary and attend to the profound. We carry with us our regrets, doubts, fears, stories, laughter. May they inspire our worship. Above all, may we each meet what we need most to find on this day in this common sacred space. Please join me now in listening to our doxology without singing. My name is Aria Curtis. I am your elementary program coordinator at UUC, and I am so glad to join you for this morning's Time for All Ages. One of my favorite ways to make a space sacred is with an altar. I love it because you can do it anywhere, and it doesn't have to be in a place that already feels sacred. You can make an altar at church or in your living room or your backyard. Altars don't need any specific or special thing on them. They just need items that are important to you. Altars help us create sacred space where it maybe didn't feel sacred before, with items that represent the sacred to us. So this morning, we created an altar together. Melody and I invited you to bring an item from home that is significant to you and your family. You might have brought something that reminds you of a loved one or a special place or a special memory. You might have brought something you use as part of a spiritual practice or something that reminds you of the sacred. If you're watching this from home, I imagine you might have created an altar near your laptop or tablet with a few different important items. Maybe you even added a chalice. So let's take a look at our altar now. It's beautiful with so many special items. As delightful as it would be, we don't really have time to hear from each person about what they brought. So instead, I'd like to invite you to turn to a neighbor and share with them about the item you brought for the altar. What did you bring and why? Is there a story behind it? What is its importance in your life? If you didn't bring something to add to the altar, that's okay. You can share about an item you might put on an altar, or maybe a meaningful physical object that's on your person, such as a photo in your wallet, or an important item of clothing, or a piece of jewelry. If you're at home, I invite you to turn to a family member and share. If you're alone, you might meditate on these questions, journal, or draw. So we're going to have just a couple minutes to share with one another. I'll ring the bowl up here when we're done. So go ahead and begin now. Oh, you all listened so well. It was a quick share, but I hope you got to share something meaningful. In creating this altar together and sharing with one another about our items, we have become active participants in creating the sacred. I imagine that when you placed your item up here, you probably did so with some care, placing it gently, being sure not to knock aside the other items. In doing so, together we practiced reverence. I imagine that you were thoughtful about what you brought, too. I bet it took some time to pick your item out, to consider what it means to you and your family, and what you might share about it. Maybe you even talked about it as a family. This is practicing intention. All of this together not only highlights the sense of sacred in this space, our beautiful chapel, it also highlights the sacred in this space between us, and that we create the sacred when we are together. This is a really beautiful, special altar. Thank you for creating it with me.
Welcome to University Unitarian Church. My name is Melody Moberg, and I'm Director of Religious Education. I'm also a seminary student pursuing Unitarian Universalist ministry. Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Begin by taking a breath. Begin by stretching, moving, settling your body so you're more comfortable. Breathe again, and notice the points of contact between your body and the floor or your chair. We're going to begin our time together with a guided visualization. Imagine a place that you hold as sacred. This could be a house of worship, a building, a room, or a place in nature. Imagine yourself on the border or perimeter of your sacred space. See what it looks like, and notice how it feels to approach the edge of your sacred space. And now imagine yourself come to the threshold and then crossing the threshold into your sacred space. Is the air cooler or warmer? Do noises become muffled or more perceptible? Now that you're in your sacred space, look around you. What about this place makes you feel awe? What can you see, hear, smell, or touch? How does your body feel in this sacred space? Feel within you a swell of gratitude for the gift of this sacred space in your life and in your mind. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, accompany us. Be with us in times of trouble and times of gladness. May we feel your presence as we embark out into the world, and may we feel your presence in our moments of isolation. Help us to access curiosity and wisdom. Help us to fully inhabit our grief. Be with us in discernment and lead us always toward the sacred space of ease and rest. To these imperfect words, I now invite you to add your individual prayers and intentions. Blessed be, and Amen.
Good morning. I'm Judith Wood.
And I'm Cal Van Zee.
We've been members of UUC for about 25 years. Our family has been nurtured, challenged, and sustained by this church community in many ways over that time.
When we first joined, we were focused on a religious education for our 3 children, and we were grateful for an hour of intellectual stimulation with other adults. In spring of this year, when I received a cancer diagnosis, I knew the church would be there for me. Reverends John, Beth, and Bruce Davis helped me discover my new life.
We have felt surrounded by care and love of so many here. We give to UUC because we want our church to be there for others, as it has been for us. Please join us in saying our offertory words. This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
Would you please rise now in body or in spirit for hymn number 38, Morning Has Broken. Once more, not vocalizing, but experiencing the music in whatever other ways.
When I was a child, I carried a red milk crate into the sumac forest off of my driveway. I walked into the sumac forest on trampled paths and found a small clearing. In the clearing, I pressed the overturned milk crate onto a patch of sweet-smelling grass, and then I sat on it. I was maybe 6 feet into the wooded border of our front yard in north-central Wisconsin. I could still see our driveway and the road, and I could still hear my parents. But I felt set apart in a private world. I felt connected to the sumac and the grass and the wind. I took deep breaths and felt connected to myself. I had discovered sacred space and claimed it as such. Sacred spaces are places that feel holy to us. We usually connect sacred space with religion. We can find sacred space in a mosque, under the dome of a cathedral, or in a temple. One of my first sacred spaces was the sanctuary of the First Universalist Unitarian Church in Wausau, Wisconsin. I loved the old church smell of the sanctuary, and I loved how my body felt when I crossed the threshold into its cool, spacious interior. I loved its soaring rafters and the stained glass windows with Christian iconography, which remained mysterious to me. But sacred space is not just found in houses of worship, or rooms, or physical spaces. Sacred space can be evoked. Sacred space can be learned. Sacred space can be an outdoor wedding, a vista, a website, a gathering of friends. Sacred space can be intangible. I began my seminary program at Seattle University in 2016. The election made the importance of liberal religious spaces like Unitarian Universalism crystal clear. I was so thrilled to be studying again, thrilled to be in a program where students asked big, deep questions, and where meaning-making was part of the curriculum. Beginning that fall, I also found myself seeking out young adult audiobooks about magic. This happened after a decade of feeling uninterested in fiction. At first, I thought that reading books about magic was a desire to reconnect with my inner child. Or I thought that it meant I needed to reread something comforting and fluffy to counterbalance the intensity of the world or the intensity of my theological studies. But I quickly discovered that books about magic and being a seminary student went hand in hand. Stories about developing hidden senses and learning to come into one's own power feel very appropriate to the path towards ministry. I was learning how to craft a ritual, how to listen, how to be with people in their grieving. I was learning to sense the presence of the sacred in conversations with other people. Developing all of these skills felt just like magic. I learned a lot of lessons from my audiobooks that could be applied to life. Like I read in books by Mercedes Lackey, magicians need to learn how to sense and move with their magic. Magic is an art that needs to be practiced and developed. Carry On by Rainbow Rowell showed me that magicians have to guard their magic or risk depleting it to the point of burnout. Some spells take enormous energy. Lev Grossman's The Magicians reminded me that intelligence and magical giftedness can be misused by narcissists. the graphic novel The Witch Boy reinforced the importance of community, multi-generational healing, and coming-of-age rituals to harness one's magic. The Witch Boy also explores how harmful it can be to gatekeep these rituals because of gender. I think this metaphor of magic is applicable to many callings. In the memoir See No Stranger, Sikh activist Valerie Kaur describes her education at Yale Law School as a process of learning spells. By learning to use the language of the law, Kaur was able to cast a spell of particular words in a particular order, which can work magic on our unjust legal system. Kaur's growing collection of spells could open locked doors and help those at the margins in a particular and skillful way, a way that was formerly inaccessible to her. As a hospital chaplain intern, I discovered there's a depth and power in the language of prayer. Learning to pray out loud with patients invokes sacred space between us and the divine in what was previously a mere hospital room. One takes care to use the particular words for the divine most holy to a patient. And one also takes care to use the particular words a patient uses to express their own vulnerable longing and hope. Instead of opening up the legal system, using the language and metaphor expressed by a patient opens up their capacity for presence and deep meaning-making. It makes possible the magic of being heard. When I walked into my sumac clearing and sat on my red milk crate, I always brought a book with me. In particular, I read and reread The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis and His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. These books both belong to a category of portal fantasy. In portal fantasy, a person is transported from this world to another through magic, particularly through a portal, like a rabbit hole or a painting. The sumac clearing and the red milk crate were a sacred space to me. It was there that I first tried meditating, and it was there that I first felt a sense of connection with all that is. But the sumac clearing and the books I brought with me were also a portal to sacred space. A portal to the sacred space found in books. When children read, they do it with their whole selves. It's an overwhelming experience to read as a child, getting sucked into the story and perceiving the world of the story as though it's real. Adults aren't able to read in this same way. Revisiting the Chronicles and His Dark Materials as an adult, I see that a lot of my sense of the sacred was shaped from reading these books in childhood. Like most kids, I wanted to escape to Narnia. I loved the Voyage of the Dawn Treader the most out of the Chronicles. I was particularly bewitched by the story's silver sea at the easternmost edge of the earth. The description of this sun-drenched sea, with its lily pads and sweet-tasting waters, was interfused with a sense of spirituality. The silver sea evokes a thin space, where the veil between worlds grows thin. In the final volume of His Dark Materials, The Amber Spyglass, I was filled with awe at descriptions of dust, the subatomic particle bringing intelligence to the universe. I was particularly drawn to the chapters about a parallel world, inhabited by elephant-like sentient beings known as the Mulefa. What drew me to these two books in particular was ironic. The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis contain heavy Christian symbolism. Lewis was a medieval scholar, and he denied that the books were technically an allegory. However, once you know that the books contain veiled Christian symbolism, it's impossible to not see it. In The Magician's Book, A Skeptic's Adventures in Narnia, the literary critic Laura Miller explores her sense of betrayal and loss as a child when she discovered the chronicles were trying to spoon-feed her Christian moralism. The flip side of this all-encompassing way that children read books means that they don't perceive allegory or hidden meanings in the way that adults do. Miller also explores what's so compelling to her about the Chronicles. Ironically, there's a pagan delightfulness to Narnia that continues to attract children. As a child, I could not see the Christianity in Narnia, but I could sense its paganism and animism. And these things felt alive and alluring to me. Miller thinks that this sense of the pagan comes through to readers because Lewis, unlike his friend J.R.R. Tolkien, did chaotic mash-up world building. Lewis drew from all the ancient and medieval works which sparked joy for him. Miller writes, C.S. Lewis poured into his imaginary world everything that he had adored in the books he read as a child. Treasures collected from Dante, from Spenser, from Malory, from Austen, from old romances and ballads and fairy tales and pagan epics. Everything that Lewis had ever read and loved went into Narnia. The deep and moving paganism I perceived in Narnia was there because C.S. Lewis, the medievalist, had inserted these themes into Narnia from other texts. These passages, too, were portals. It's also ironic that I felt such a religious sense of awe and wonder at his dark materials. Its author, Philip Pullman, is a well-known atheist. The series was contested when it came out because of its strong stance against Christianity, targeting Catholicism in particular. The series reframes original sin as a positive thing, and it includes a plot to kill God. But as a child reader, I didn't perceive the series' attacks on religion. In part, this is because the religion that Philip Pullman built up for attack was so clearly hollow. I just saw wonder and awe in the worlds unlocked through portal magic. I saw the buzzing religious potential of the sacred, which could not be contained by the fallen from grace church, which Pullman depicted. One of the most tangible ways to build and explore sacred space in one's own life is through the practice of building an altar. In my mind, there are 3 steps to building an altar. 1, make space. 2, name what is holy. And 3, approach with reverence. In Wicca, the practice of casting a circle raises energy and allows magic to happen. A key component of casting a circle is creating a boundary. The boundary protects and allows the energy to amplify. To make an altar, you need to start off with clearing space. You designate a space and then clean it, move clutter to the side, put away your knickknacks. Maintaining this sacred boundary is a constant practice. We need to create sacred space in our lives to attend to the sacred. Many of you watching the service this morning have experience with this practice, clearing off your calendar to attend worship online or in person. We create sacred space for worship through boundary setting, a combination of will and communication to make plans with family, wake up on time, and follow through with our commitments. The essential work of moving tasks to the side so you can attend to your spirit for this hour. The second step in creating an altar is to name what is holy. This process is not just intellectual. First, you need to stop and breathe. You need to feel into your body to know what you're feeling. then you need to consider what you most need to center in your life right now. What values, feelings, or objects do you need to adorn your altar? Next, you need to look at all of the possible objects for your altar and through discernment, select the few that you need to grace your altar today. An altar is a microcosm. You cannot put all of your family photos, all of your favorite rocks, or all of your sacred objects on your altar. You need to practice discernment. The third step of creating an altar is to approach with reverence. The point of creating an altar is to make space in your life to attend to the things that are most important to you. I used to think that reverence was a passive feeling. Now I think of reverence as a practice. The beautiful thing about reverence is that practicing the posture of reverence begets more reverence. In our Montessori-based spirit play classroom, children and teachers practice church through practicing reverence. The teacher models reverence when telling stories to illustrate our principles and sources. The storyteller carefully selects this week's story from a shelf and brings it to the carpet. Like building an altar, the storyteller begins by making space, carefully unfolding and smoothing a felt circle onto the carpet where the story can take place. Then the storyteller uses manipulative materials like figurines or felt cutouts to tell the story. The storyteller's rapt attention on the materials encourages children to become curious and engrossed in the story themselves. Each story ends with open, wondering questions. And these questions are there to practice the skill of curiosity and wonder. Then the storyteller carefully puts away the materials and places the story back on the shelf. If reverence is a practice and not a static emotion, that means that we can create sacred space actively. I want to share with you the experiences of sacred space most dear to my heart. When I was a child, my family would vacation on the shores of Lake Superior every summer. The lake shore looks a lot like the ocean coast in Washington. The water is freezing and clear, and the shore is covered in polished stones and bare driftwood. This place was sacred to my father. Submerging himself in the freezing water was like a baptism to him. The ritual of moving from the sauna to the lake and back again, an act of purification. I have many memories of my dad standing in Lake Superior, gazing out toward the horizon. When vacationing, my dad was always in search of greater simplicity. The emptiness of the shore helped him finally relax into the moment, as did the freezing water stretching off far towards the blue horizon. My dad traveled to southern Wisconsin to visit the property where the conservationist Aldo Leopold lived. Afterward, he wrote a song about it called Aldo Leopold's Shack. In this light-hearted song, my dad describes the holiness of Aldo Leopold's shack, which was once a chicken coop. Since my dad passed away 2 years ago, I've learned how to play this song on his old guitar. Playing my dad's music makes me feel close to him, and it reminds me of his values of simplicity, humor, and conservation. My dad loved to swim, fish, and be near water. Our backyard opened up onto the Wisconsin River. He spent many evenings sitting on the shore, watching the water and contemplating life. Water, too, can be a sacred space that moves in rivulets and waves, a sacred space that dances across rapids. Water is now an expression of portal magic for me. I feel connected with my dad when I visit most bodies of water. I feel his presence as I walk along the Fremont Canal or stand in the Sound and look out towards the blue horizon. When I fall asleep, I often have visions of walking through University Unitarian Church's building before our remodel. My mind has mapped out the hallways, the chapel, and the classrooms, sacred spaces which are no more. Sacred spaces now transformed into new sacred space. During the pandemic, I sometimes led worship from our empty chapel. In the midst of isolation, walking into our beautiful sacred space was immensely powerful. But a church is more than just a building. As we emerge and begin to inhabit our church building again, remember that reverence is a practice. Remember that we can co-create sacred space together through the intentional practices of our lives. As we make space, name what is holy, and approach with reverence, we together can build the sacred space that we most need in our lives. May it be so, and amen.
Thank you, Melody, for that sermon this morning. Would you please now rise in body or spirit and join in experiencing hymn number 357, Bright Morning Stars. And so as we close this service this morning, I want to thank all of you for being part of creating sacred space here this morning, both here in our chapel and online. It is incredibly touching to me to see a community of people, after an incredibly long time of having to make adaptation after adaptation, continue to come with open heart, willingness, and presence to create a truly inclusive community space. So thank you all. And I close with this benediction by Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace.